Hello, 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 and welcome to another Twitch broadcast, a live broadcast of Game Guru. Now, as you know, if you've watched previous broadcasts, this channel is entirely and completely unscripted and unrehearsed. And this week is particularly special because my mind is blank, my mind is completely empty. And so what I'd like you to do, if you are joining us live, is to post some questions and post some things that you'd like to see. And whilst you're thinking about that and maybe putting in a post, I'm going to go to the forums, because there's a place you can go. You can post your ideas about what I talk about over the next 30 minutes every Wednesday at 4 o'clock. So if we go to Twitch sessions, which is sticked, so you can find it at the top of the forum, scroll to the end, you'll find out what people have been posting. So if we scroll back to, that's where we got last time. Basically a deep dive exploration of models and things like Blender, 3D modeling and editing your assets and things like that, as it pertains to the character creator that's built into Game Guru. And I completely deferred on that. I'm going to give it to Gravy as soon as it's his turn to do a few Twitch sessions. So I'm going to skip that, move on to the next one. It looks like there are 3 more posts, and I'll quickly read through them. I'd like to know how to create a cave system with torches, various bits of caves, frustrating to create them, blah 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 blah. Okay, making caves in Game Guru, great. We'll have a go at that maybe. Is it possible to create a House of the Dead on rails type game? We don't control movement. I know what you mean. Heralds all the way back, way back to games such as Operation Wolf, where you basically just slid along the screen and shot anything that moves. The only difference between that and Game Guru perhaps is that you can actually move. So yes, I think there's commands in Lua to freeze the player. Probably isn't commands to actually gracefully move the player through the world, but maybe we'll take a look at that if we've got time. But I have my doubts. I don't think we can actually slide the player around. We can make the player freeze like in Operation Wolf and then move from point to point to point, but I don't think that's really what you're after. You probably want a few more commands in Lua to do that. And the third one, brilliant Twitch broadcasts. Very kind. Too generous. Watch them all, catch up, great work, few things. Good level design, good working practices, advice on keeping entities tidy, workflow. Most people can add new entities. Can get bogged down when you start adding lots of them. Yeah. Really, if I were to do a presentation on that, I would actually start with a piece of paper and kind of show you how you can lay out your overall game scope before you drill down into individual levels and then drill down into the objectives that you want to fulfill of those levels. So perhaps a good start is to first of all come up with your style, the kind of style of game you want, and then sketch it out on paper, and then do some prototypes, design some quick levels, play around with the content that's available on the core product in the DLCs through the store, third-party content and content you can create yourself, just to get a nice idea of where you want to go with it. Whilst it's in my brain and it's sort of reeling from the Play Expo experience I had the weekend just gone, I must invite you to check out a game called Steve. It was written in Game Guru. You'll find it on the Indie Dev Fort competition page where you can download it and have a play. Really great idea of sort of, let's have a game idea which uses a different graphical style and really put a lot of energy into, achieving that style and then making a game around it. And it was really quite impressive. I mean, you have to play it to put that smile on your face that I'm wearing right now. So please do check it out. And we're going to sort of bring it a bit more to the front, maybe put it on our website, things like that. So do check that out. It's a game called Steve. It's very cool. And yes, along the way, if there's any ideas I have about, this is a good idea for good level design and good work practices, then I will certainly mention it during the next 23.5 minutes. So scrolly back to the top. Who got there first? Caves. Okay, let's have a go at making caves in Game Guru. Now, we don't have underground building systems, and we don't even have a cave pack. At least not a cave pack that's built into the default graphics of Game Guru. But there's a couple of things I can show you, how you can sort of, in quotes, fake caves, and the more work you do on the design, the more you can actually get away with it. So enough of me rambling, let's go make some caves. So as you know, we start off with a nice flat environment. So if we're in caves, we're probably in the mountains or somewhere rocky. So choose a random level instead, so you get lots more crinklies. As you can see, we've got a few lumps here, but we want better hills than that. Oh, and the good news, I may have mentioned it before, but with the new update, the new performance update going out, the one which is built on C++, we replaced the diamond square algorithm that generates landscapes with something else that actually produces slightly better landscapes and more predictable landscapes. Like last time when I clicked on new random terrain and it was generally flat, you won't get that with the new one. Just something to mention. So for anyone who doesn't really know Game Guru, this is the very first broadcast. You bet you're wondering what you're looking at. Well, this is an editor which allows you to sculpt your interface, your terrain, your landscape, and then eventually add things down. But what I want to start you off with is the test game mode, because we're clearly not using the right terrain texture. It's all grass, and in the mountains it wouldn't be grass, would it? It would be some sort of rock. Or at least something that's, got less life in it before we have our nice sandy caves. So what you can do is change the terrain type from lush to any of these, and we're going to change it to maybe desert. Yeah, so that's like a bit more barren, it's a bit more sandy. And in order to create our cave, caves are probably dark, so as we're inside a lot, let's kind of keep the background as dark as possible. So we'll move the sky down to something like night skies that's quite in dark. So now we've got that, we can come back out, and if we're talking about good working practices, always a good idea, save early, save often, and save under different file names. So we'll call this cave game 001, so we can have 0013999, that's 999 iterations of this level. And that way, if for whatever reason we mess up and we do something we didn't want to do in our level, always after 5 minutes you think, oh, I wish I hadn't done the last 5 minutes, it's terrible. You can just step back to earlier iterations that you saved under a different file name. So the reason I'm going in is to show you the test game, but also to change the terrain. Now what we're going to do is create some terrain sculpting. So you've got hill making, and if you hold down shift, hole making. But what I'm interested in is this command here. It basically flattens at a particular level. So given that, what you can do is lower the terrain, then use this flattening tool to find that new height, and then cut a channel like that. And now if we look at our test game, you can imagine it's now cut a groove through the landscape, basically lowering where you're standing and creating walls left and right. And if you think about what a cave actually is, all a cave really is, it's sort of like I said, a big depression in the ground with a roof on, and then you've instantly got a cave. So we've got, 3 parts of what we need. We've got the lowered area, we've got the walls, we just need a roof on top. Now because this is what's called a height map, the terrain is height map based, it's not voxel based or anything like that. So it doesn't have multiple layers, it basically has one height at each point on the terrain. So we can't really have a roof because that would require multiple planes of rendering. But what you do have, and have in abundance, is entities. And lots of them. So if you get it for the first time, you get lots of graphics to start you off with. You've got buildings, cartoon aspects, lots of characters to run around your game. You've got more bits and pieces, bits of castle, bits of fixtures and furniture. You've got collectibles, you can collect rocket packs and medical supplies. You've got decals, which are just nice flashy 2D graphics that will always face the camera, so you can have things like flashing neon signs. Big block fixtures is like blocks and things that would be added to buildings. If you wanted to make your buildings, you've got foliage for grass, furniture to populate the insides of buildings. You've got large structures which are mostly industrial. Lots and lots of categories, including medieval, so you can have genres, and just general scenery elements that you might find in various different games, and of course lots and lots of weapons. But at no time throughout our core assets did you find anything to do with caves. Now, I happen to know that one of these mega packs has caves in it. So we've got Arabic town buildings, more decals, more foliage, more industrial, mystic library. What is that? Oh, right. Looks like the contents of an ancient wizard's library. That's pretty cool. More scenery. Oh, cool. So even though it's called scenery, actually the assets themselves can lend themselves to maybe rocky, cavey structures. So we'll remember that. Megapack 1 scenery has lots of rocks in it. So carrying on. Buildings, catacombs. So let's say you wanted to, some parts of your cave is more formalised, like sort of dwarven halls and things like that. Then this looks like it'll be perfect when you get to more structured stuff. But it's all very... I'm going to have to learn all the bits and pieces, and I don't think we've got time to do that. Megapack 2, caves. Okay, so we've got what look like holes cut through a solid block. That would be perfect, I think. I think we could play around with that. And we've got cave pack as well, so we've got more cave things. Looks like stuff for mining, shoring things up, stalactites, stalagmites, mining equipment and of that ilk, and boulders. Very cool. Of course, characters, churches, dungeons. There, that's underground if you want to like break through a wall and get to a dungeon. So we'll probably use those. Any more in here in the scenery model pack 2? No, maybe statues, maybe nick a few of those. More buildings in Megapack 3. Decals, foliage, furniture, so modern day stuff, industrial, and some more bits and bobs and some rocks. So I think our best bet is Model Pack 1 scenery, Model Pack 2 caves, and cave pack. But we still haven't answered the crucial question. We want our roof for our cave, because that was what I originally wanted to demonstrate. So if we pick something like Desert Rock 3, what we really want is something kind of flattish, like a flattish rock. Yeah, there you go, that's a nice flattish rock. And I'll just remove that. And what I'm going to do is something rather cheeky. I'm going to go to Widget and Scale, and I'm going to stretch it along this axis and this axis. Now you can almost imagine, that's probably a bit too big. You don't want to make your entity stretches too big because you ruin the texture quality. You know, the texture would stretch and it would look really good when you're in the game. But for the purposes of this demonstration, that is, when you start wanting to create your own models, you kind of know what the shape generally has to be. So we're going to drop that down here, and we extract it so we can hold down shift to do multiple things. So we put one down here, maybe here, rotate it 90 degrees, another one there, another 90 degrees. The reason I'm rotating it is that when you look up, you'll actually see a bit of variation in the ceiling, which is always good. And that's the last one. So effectively what I've done, I have sealed the valley with all this roof stuff. So if I press test game, it will start us at the start marker we started at before, and we should be underneath those huge rocks. Yep. So you'll notice two things. One, there's still gaps. We're not really convinced that we're in a cave yet because I can just see through into the sky. And two, why is it all brown underneath? Well, the reason is whoever created this asset, the artist realised that most rocks will be placed on the ground, so you don't need the texture underneath the rock. Therefore, you can save texture resolution for the bits that you do see. So it's a nice technique to optimise the quality of your texture. The problem is we weren't using it like that. We wanted to use it for roofs. So the nice simple way to do that is just use the shortcut key 1 and rotate it 180 degrees on its x-axis, and then that will just turn it all upside down, and we end up with exactly what we wanted. And that's the 1 key when you're in the editor. That does that. And if you remember, we also saw that there was a couple of gaps, so just to make sure that we're going to do this correctly, hold down shift, maybe drop that line a little bit and then fill in those gaps completely. And then at the other end, probably fill it in there as well. Of course, I'm doing this very, very quickly. I don't really want to spend all of the broadcast just tweaking one level. I just wanted to give you some basic pointers to start you off. So as you can see, I've nearly filled in that gap, but if we just climb up to the top, actually they're too steep so we can't climb that, you can drop it a little bit more. And another really cool trick, now this might mess up because this is live and unrehearsed, so I have no idea what's going to happen. If I press F9, you get what's called in-game editing, and we're currently set to terrain. So there's two ways you can fill that gap. One, you can just increase the radius, and then the size of the terrain. So basically you can get the terrain to go up and meet the roof like that. That's one way of doing it. So now we've completely sealed ourselves in, and as you go around your cave system you can say, oh, there's a bit of a spike there, we'll fill that one in, and we'll fill that one in. Right, so there's another way as well. If you press E and go to the editing entity mode, you can highlight, see, you can highlight these entities. So what we can do is bring that one a little bit closer. So if you do page down, you'll actually bring it lower down, but of course as you can see it's just now not high enough. But there's other things you can do, like rotate. If I press the 1 key, I can rotate the entity, and that's another way in which I can cheat and seal. And 3 key will rotate it on the y-axis, so put one there, rotate a bit more, bring it a bit closer, put one there. And then when you're happy and you don't want this cursor anymore, just right click, removes it, then you can highlight the next thing. And I rather like the little gap, makes it look like a limestone cave with the rain coming through there and there. But I don't like that, so I'm going to sort that out. Page down, 2, rotates the other way, really fill that in, delete. Proper sealed cave. So there we've created a cave with, you know, terrain and entities that weren't really designed for caves. But there you go, you can do that. Press F9, goes back into your game mode, and then you can run around, appreciate it in all its glory. But of course it's a little bright, isn't it, for a cave? Which takes us on to the next point that was asked. Can we have, you know, flickering torches to sort of light the cave and give us a little bit of mood? And then once we've got that sort of general background, then we can sort on the details. Which brings me forward 2 posts to the request about how do you do good design and workflow. Well, once you've decided the style of graphics you want for your game, and the game's going to have some cave elements in some of the levels that you'll play, you also need to figure out the lighting, you know, how you want your game to be lit. And right now, in my opinion, it doesn't look very good at all. It's too bright by far. So what we need to do is have some lights. So this is a quick introduction to this massive set of menus. If you press tab twice when you're in test game, you get all this, and please don't be phased by it. It's just we're showing you every single control that allows you to modify the visuals at the same time. And you'll learn these one by one as you go, but the one thing I'm going to point at right now is something called ambient level. If I set it to 100%, what it's telling the engine is I don't need any additional lights. I will light everything with 100% ambience, so even if there are no lights anywhere in my game, you know, even the sun, forget the sun, I don't need the sun. I'm just going to set everything to maximum ambience, so I don't need any contribution from any other light sources, and you get something like that. So let's say you entered some mystical light realm. You may want something this bright in one of your levels. You notice as well, I don't think it gets through on the broadcast, but actually the brightness control is detecting it's too bright and then dropping it down a little bit. It's not as good as it would be in a future implementation of DirectX 11, which uses proper HDR, tone mapping, and proper light adjustments. But there, as you can see, you know, when you go from a very dark place to a very bright place, you get light adaptation happening already in the shader right now. But this horrible, we don't want that. We want a nice dark cave. So we're going to drop light ambience right down to 0. What that means is there is no ambient light being contributed at all. There's no artificial sort of biasing anymore. So the only light is going to come from things that we've specified. And one of the things that is still giving us some illumination, even though these rocks are all blocking us in, this floor still thinks it's being illuminated by the sun. And that's what this surface level is. If you switch surface level to 0, it says take whatever light's coming from the sun and multiply it by this percentage, 0% or 100%. If you do it 0, sun multiplied 0 is 0. So ambience and surface, I'm now walking around and I can't see anything. So now what we want is probably give ourselves some brief illumination like this. Now what we want is to add some light, which is the torches we were talking about. But before I do that, I bet your next question is, well, how can I edit anything inside this script? I've just covered it in a ceiling, and now I can't do anything. So thanks very much, Lee. What I'm going to have to do, remove the ceiling. to edit something and then put the ceiling back. Well, that's one way of doing it, but there is another technique. If you look at the bottom right in the status panel, you've got Edit All, Normal. If I press Tab once, you'll notice it's gone to Clip equals 655. What Clip is, it's a lovely little editor feature which will slice all geometry that's near the camera, and the 655 is the distance from the camera. If you now use the mouse, if you hold down, I think you have to hold down a key, but because there are so many controls I cannot remember which one it is. So if you press F1 when you're in the top down editing mode, it gives you all the shortcuts, because no human can remember all this stuff. So here we go, zoom into map, zoom out of map, here it is. It's the left and right arrows, it's the same key as the comma and the full stop is on a UK keyboard, to extend and call the draw distance. So let's see if that works. Because we have been playing around with the keys at a certain point. So you just have to be aware. Well, we're not getting any joy that way or that way. Maybe if we have to be in this mode, like that. No, and no, and no. Right, my guess is we have actually hidden it very well. But the good news is it's hidden the roof. So if we press Tab, we see all the geometry. If we press Tab again, we're obviously slicing off that level. And I've just realised something. As I'm zooming out, obviously we're way more than 655 units from the camera, and it's still not showing the roof. What I think 655 is, it's the absolute Y position of all geometry, and it will only render things on one side of that sort of invisible vertical line. Oh, I just glanced over to my my Twitch messages, and one of the users, Pirate Mike, is saying, use the control key. So that's what I'm going to do. So hold in control. Yeah, right. F1 mode is out of date. Extending the draw call distance is hold down the control, mouse scroll one way, and then mouse scroll another way. So I'm just going to go up past 655. The idea is we want to see our roofs again, because if you think about it, if it's clipping the roofs, it will probably be clipping absolutely everything else. And also another thing I should mention, when you're doing random terrain, it literally will create, very big heights. So you don't really know where the height is until you do this. So now we know that our roofs, our entities, were planted at a Y position, a worldwide position of 1,655 units. So you can see what it's doing. It's slicing through the geometry at that particular Y coordinate. And once we just about get rid of the roof, that means we can't see the roof, but what we can do, if we dropped in something like a half barrel, we can see that. And if we hold down Control, I've already forgotten it, and scroll it further down. Have I gone the other way? Yeah, I've gone the other way. Oh no, I was going the right way. So that removes the roof, but if we carry on going down, eventually you'll see we'll actually erase that barrel as it gets chopped. There you go, chopped it. And if we added something really big, like a full barrel, and put it next to it, you'll actually see how it's moving up and down. So, sorry it took 7 minutes to do that. Rick's suggestion that we can make that easier. Well, please provide some feedback on how we can make that process a little bit easier, because that will be most welcome. Because, it's a bit embarrassing when the guy who supposedly created this can't figure out half the controls. I suppose it's a symptom of the fact that there's just lots and lots you can do in Game Guru, and it's very difficult to squeeze into one person's head. So now we've actually found a way we can continue to edit our level without interference from the roof. Now we're going to do what I originally set off to do, which is to add a light. So we'll keep it nice and simple. We'll drop in a light, and then we'll do test game. The idea of lights is that it can be static or dynamic. Static lights only really contribute when you're doing light mapping, which is a separate process. But by default, lights go in as dynamic, which means they are added to the final scene, which is pretty cool, because whether you're light mapped or not, you can use dynamic lights for many things, including flickering torches, rooms with lights that can switch on and off, or just you want to highlight a feature within your game level and have it glow and look very important and meaningful. But now I think you will agree we're starting to get a little bit closer to what we want in terms of a cave atmosphere. We've dialed down the ambience, we've got rid of any sky in case there are any gaps, and we just want to have those gaps black. And if you look at the surface level, if we drop that down to 0, the sun is no longer playing no part in that luminance. The only thing left is our light. If we switch that light off, we would have no idea where we were. So we're in. You can appreciate now, if I showed that in a screenshot, somebody would say, "Oh, a cave." Great. Well, the sides might give it away. Someone who's used Game Guru before might say, "Oh yeah, that's just a terrain and you've just got a thing through it." Well, there's more things we can do. For example, we can go back to a huge collection of rocks, and we've also got cave elements. But the one I kind of like the look of is something like this. Rock 4. Oh, that's a big one. Let's not use Rock 4. It's way too big for our purposes. But this one. Yeah. So in addition to, say, having a nice uniform slope, you can insert, using the page up and page down, which lets you go through the terrain, that little box thing there. If you go put your entity underneath the terrain, in previous versions you'd just lose the entity forever. You'd never find it again. What we decided to do was kind of still show you where the entity was by making it into a bound box wireframe. So we know the entity's there, but only when it's on the other side of the terrain will we actually show it. So what you can actually do is hold down shift, plonk it down, rotate it a little bit, and then you plonk down another one about there. You can bring it down a little bit, do some more rotations on different axes, and then maybe rotate it some more like that, and then plonk that in there, and then maybe another time there. And now if I actually run the game, sorry, test the level as it were, we're starting to break up that uniform idea of the sides. So you can imagine the next thing you want to do is make sure that the rocks were the same colour as the terrain, or vice versa. You would choose a terrain that's more orangey to match these. And it just so happens, because we're already in test game, we can quickly flick through all the other things that we've got. And I think Wasteland is a little more appropriate. It's certainly blending closer than that other one. If there's anything else we can use, we've got Desert Valley. Is that orangey? No. But I do like the rocks, actually. There's really nice rocks. So I'm going to show you another thing, because there are many things you can do in Game Guru. You've got some terrain, but you wanted a different colour and you don't have an artist, or you just don't have the assets. Well, what you can do is just change the colouring of it. Now let's see what happens if I tint that red. See what I've done? See what Lee just did? I just tinted it. Oh. It's a bit more orange, so a bit more yellow. Like that. Need lots of red there. And again, this is something that you can take a long time, just making sure it's right. And I won't be finicky, but yeah, you can actually start blending those two colours together, even though the assets weren't actually designed to sit next to each other. So as I said, we've got one light in there, but it's one light, it's not particularly good. We need lots more of them. I just want to see if it works great at a desert one. Actually, I do like the Death Valley texture, some nice texture there. And of course, in F9 mode, you can, you know, rough up your floor a little bit, put some dents in, raise that, you know. This is probably where you're going to spend a lot of your time just iterating this process, you know, making it look like there's some sand building up here, and a holder or two. Because all these things, your end user, the person who's playing the game, will definitely appreciate the fact that you've gone to that level of detail. But without further ado, I want more lights. But before I do that, I'm not really a big fan of a big white light. You know, I like to create a bit more atmosphere. Now you notice when I tried to click the light then, and then went to properties, it wasn't the light Desert Rock 7. Oh, thanks very much for that. That's because even though you're clipping it, you're still detecting that entity. So what you can do is when you click it, and it's clearly not the light, you can lock it, and now when you click it, it will completely ignore that Desert Rock. There may be another Desert Rock in the way, in which case you can lock that as well. And then click, and then see if that's the light. So I think probably we'll put this down as a bug, because it wouldn't be great if when you clip the geometry, it also clips the detection of that geometry when you want to click entities underneath. So someone can post that for me, that would be great. I can get that one fixed. So it's one of those easy fixes, but it's one of those that, because it doesn't get reported because it's a very unusual way to reproduce it, it stays in the software for quite a while. So now we know we're on the light, because when you hover over the entity, you get a huge sort of radius as to where that light will influence. But what I wanted to do is change the light colour from white to something that sort of reflects torch light, which is going to be kind of an orangey, yellowy, you know, something like that. Looks sort of a weird fleshy colour, but actually when you apply it to a scene, it'll look pretty good. So I'll apply the changes, and we're going to use this light as our base. So we'll extract, and then what I can do is hold down Shift, put one down over here, then another one, say, here. And what you can also do is use I'd like to, but of course I don't seem to be able to resize that. Oh yeah, we move. You see, I'm using the old shortcuts, and we moved them all by popular vote, and now I'm still using the old shortcut keys, which is it's making me look a bit stupid. So yeah, the plus and minus increase and decrease the size of the range. So we'll make it a bit smaller, put it there, another one there, and then one right at the end. So now we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 dynamic lights. Something to mention about dynamic lights in that the current shader system can only ever hold 4 dynamic lights in the scene. You can have hundreds in your game, but the engine will only pick the nearest 4 lights for its shader, and you'll get 3 lights in, you know, nearest to you, and then the 4th light will be used as a transition light to fade out the most distant one and fade in the next nearest one, the next 4th nearest light. And what you end up with is this kind of idea, where you can't see the end because the 3 lights nearest to you are on full glow, and the 4th one is like on standby ready for transition. And as you walk towards the other end, where the other light is, that comes in, and because you're facing this way, you didn't really notice that the light over there started fading out. And so that's how the dynamic system works. But some good news to those loyal, long-standing supporters of Game Guru. If you wait a little bit longer, something like February 2016, we're adding a DirectX 11 graphics engine, which allows you to have, and I am not kidding, hundreds of these lights. So no more fading in and out. You'll just be able to drop lights, sprinkle them like snowflakes, and they'll all work in very clever ways. They use screen space scissor clipping to make sure it only lights the pixels that are actually being influenced by those lights. It's a very efficient way to have many, many lights. But I actually rather like this idea that as you get to another scene, it glows in. It reminds me a little bit of Skyrim, how they bring in lights as you move through the scene. And I'm not going to create a whole cave system. I just wanted to sort of start you off with how it might be done. Now there's another thing, I've just glanced at the clock and I've managed to gabber on for 36 minutes on like what was supposed to be like a third of my broadcast. I guess I can talk. So before I go on and show you how to do flickering torches and then having them move around and all that kind of stuff, I just want to go and have a look at the chat system and actually see if there's any pertinent questions. I'm just looking for the question marks just so I can scan through this really simply. Relander Resende wants a short explanation about waypoints, how to create them and use them. Yeah, that should be really easy for me to whip up. I think we will extend this broadcast to an hour. I don't think I can do 30-minute broadcasts. It's just physically impossible for my mouth to do that. Rick wants us to give an update on the performance work. Well, without going into specifics and metrics, pretty phenomenal, I think, is my description right now. Ravi's doing an amazing job finding new ways to speed up the engine without actually deleting anything. So it's great to see every couple of days another big jump in performance. For my own contributions, I have, as you've read maybe you've read my dev blog, I've switched over to a little bit of CPU work, and I've managed to speed up the grass. So when you render lots and lots of grass, it can slow down because each little pixel on the grass was reading something like 8 shadow depth samples, and you multiply that by a lot of grass on the screen, it slows down. So I've added a new high technique, which will only do one sample read of the shadow texture, and it increases the frame rate quite phenomenally. On a really, heavy scene, 55 FPS, you switch to the new grass mode, it goes to 62 FPS, which is 7 FPS is a pretty big step when you're at the low FPS numbers. So that was my contribution. And today, I improved the light rays system. So that was even worse. It's a post-process effect, but each pixel, to do a really nice light map, was actually reading the blur sample where the light rays come from 80 times. 80 times for every pixel on the screen. So I've done a couple of things without diminishing the quality. I've reduced the size of the light ray render target. It used to be a half size of the screen, now it's a quarter size of the screen, and you don't really notice the drop in the resolution. What I've also done is added 3 more sliders. You won't see it on this one, but I've added 3 more to the post-process effects, which control light ray length, because you may not want it stretching all the way across your game, just slightly, localized to where the light rays most appreciated. And there's also some more like light ray quality, which control the number of samples it does per pixel, and that's the biggest one. That's the one that's going to give you all your performance. So you want that light ray quality as low as possible without the banding appearing based on the light length that you've used. I've also got something called decay, which decays the effect of the light ray as it leaves sort of its original pixel, and then it shoots off as part of the volumetric ray. So you'll be able to play with those 3 sliders when the next update comes out, and we've set the defaults so it just gives you a nice big speed boost in your games as well. And in the case of Morning Mountain Stroll and The Big Escape, for now I've switched them off because you literally cannot see any light ray effects, because they're all hugely packed in with lots of graphics, and the sun is all the way over there somewhere, completely blocked by geometry. You can't actually see any light ray effects. So by switching those off, you essentially get some insane speed ups. My goal was to get those 2 levels running at over 60 FPS on my machine. That goal, we've flown past that goal. I've just sped past it. I'm actually averaging 75 to 90 FPS with my mid-range card. So I've already achieved my goal. I ticked that off a while back. And I'm not even using the latest version. Ravi's got some more cool tricks about sort of PVS style grouping of objects and making the visibility sort even quicker. So I'm looking forward to seeing that in the next day or 2. So performance was going great. We're going to give ourselves plenty of time for testing, lots and lots of testing, make sure multiplayer still works and all the modules like Character Creator and the Importer and stuff like that, because this is a massive change. We want to make sure that our testing is rock solid, so when we release it, we're not going to ruin people's projects. So hopefully that was a nice, concise answer to the question, how's performance going? I remember a question wanted to ask how to use decals, as in create, play, one time and destroy. You mean like trigger a decal? Yeah. We used to have that in FPI. We had a lot of really cool things. You could spawn decals. We can actually have a look at Lua scripting if we get time. But before I start making this massive list of things that I need to do, I think I'll just quickly show you a waypoint before I get too distracted. So creating waypoints really simple. First thing you've got to do is go in, locate the area that you're interested in. So we'll just get rid of this light. Right. And what you can do is you've got this one, which is create new waypoint, and this one, which goes to editing the waypoints. So we want to create a new waypoint, and it adds a star. And then once you've got a star, you can hold down Shift and then click it. And what it does, it creates a node, and that node you can put anywhere you like. And just like with the main node, if you hold down Shift again and click, it generates another node from that node. And essentially, using this trick, you can actually create all the nodes you want for your waypoint path. If you've made a mistake and you don't want this node, you just hold down Shift and right click, and that deletes it. So we're going to make a simple waypoint, which is starts there, it goes to there, and then maybe it walks the cave, like so. Waypoints are all well and good, but you also need someone to walk on the waypoint. And it just so happens we actually have lots and lots of characters to do just that. So we're going to choose something like Masked Soldier. So we'll pop him anywhere on near the this main waypoint, drop him down, and what happens is this character will detect where it's nearest to a waypoint, and then if it does find a waypoint within a reasonable distance of its active range, it will start patrolling along this waypoint. So because we don't want him attacking us, we switch to waypoint, and so we can specify that. Because you notice when I dropped in an enemy, I was in edit entity mode, you see. So if I try to select the waypoint, I wouldn't be able to, you see. Actually, you can. Oh, I added that feature. Yeah, in entity mode, it also detects waypoints, so you can actually, without it to bounce back between the modes. So I must have thought about that one. So there you go. So we go to waypoint. Oh, actually, yeah, there is a reason for using waypoint editing. You see, I'm still selecting entities, that roof there, which will be a little fix that will apply. But if you go to this one, it only selects waypoints, so you don't get confused. When you're selecting it, it completely ignores all entities, so that's why it's still in. I wonder why the thing was still there. So we'll have him walking that way, that way, that way, and that way. And we need to stay out this guy's way, because otherwise he's going to turn and start shooting us. So one thing we can actually do, if we go to his properties, he should have, yeah, view cone angle, view range is 0. 0 means it's infinite. So if we set it to 100, we'll make him like a mole man. He's almost got no eyesight. And cone angle, maybe 22 degrees, so he's basically quite got tunnel vision. So we'll apply those changes. Hopefully he won't start trying to attack us. And we still need a light, don't we, because we just won't see him doing his thing. So we'll move this, we'll lock that. We've got a light, if we can get it. Yeah, have we got it? Yeah. We'll move it to there so we can actually see what's going on. And we'll delete that light. So we've got both lights permanently on. And remember, save early, save often, which I've been neglecting to do in the last 44 minutes. And we'll quick test game. But yeah, in answer to the question, creating decals, playing them and destroying them, there isn't really a lot of actual examples that you can use. So I don't think we actually got enough Lua commands to do what I think you want. I'll just show you this. There's a little trick. If you want to look into the distance, but you don't have a zoom gun, just use horizontal field of view, and you can actually zoom in. You see, it's not really good to make a game with this sort of field of view, but you can certainly see what's going on. So as you can see, this guy is following his waypoints as instructed. So that's how that works. And as for decals, I think there was actually one command that triggers them. I'll just nip out and have a look for that. You'll go into Files, Script Bank, Global.lua. I'm going to look for decal. Doesn't exist. Particle, when spelt correctly, and in the right case. I'm looking down. Yeah. Okay, start particle emitter, stop particle emitter. I think this is all we've got right now, which emits particles. The only other thing you've got, actually I've just remembered, we do have quite a few decals. And I want to demonstrate that to you right now. Just shows the scope of this product. These are decals. See? All these wonderful things. If I pick like something that would be good in a cave, like fire. Actually, yeah, torch flame would be pretty good, wouldn't it? So, but that might be a little bit too small, because I think it's for a candle. So we'll use fire, and we drop it in. And you can use right mouse button and the W key to zoom right in. So as you can see, we have a decal. And this thing there, this circle with the little pointy thing, that's just a handle, so you can actually just move it around. make it convenient for you. And let's just have a quick look what the Lua script is. Decal_facing.lua. You see, we learn something every day. I just want to show you what that looks like in test game. So initializing physics is always going to be the longest process because it's basically collecting all these polygons and working out a way to make collision really fast. So you see, no matter which way we look at this object, this entity, it'll always face the camera. And I bet you're wondering, well, how is that even possible? Well, I'm going to show you just how possible that is, because we now know the name of the script. It was decal_, and we have a few. We've got flatten facing. This is the one we were using. So as you can see, it's a regular entity. So it's not a decal as in sort of the old FPS Creator Classic style. It's the entity is the decal. The entity is a plane, it's a quad, so that's the geometry. And then the texture is a texture atlas animation, which I can show you shortly. So the instruction is quite simple. Always face the camera, and then if anybody activates this decal, we destroy it. So you can do if used on this particular entity and get rid of it if you wanted to get rid of an effect. If we look at the makeup of this decal, we go to decals, and then the decal geometry itself is just a quad, and we can obviously size that later on, but it's just a regular square quad. And if we can look for the fire one, which we had, and we go to DDS, you can have a dedicated DDS viewer, but I actually have Visual Studio to show my DDSs. So as you can see, it's 4x4, it's a looping animation of fire. Now that's an interesting thing, because Visual Studio gobbles up all the video memory and issues a clear command, just like Windows Media Player. Game Guru doesn't like it when someone else steals all the video memory. It doesn't like it, so it has to reboot. In DirectX 11, we're going to add some extra code which can handle that. So if someone else steals the video memory, Game Guru DirectX 11 will steal it back without having to reset everything. Fortunately, remember when we said save early, save often? Well, that's one of the benefits. If you was working on something and then you ran an app that wiped out your app, did you save it? So we did, so we're smug. But of course, we didn't save it in time for putting that decal down. But at least you can see how decals work now. But there isn't really a way to stop the decal from animating. You can hide it and then show another entity that's a static version of the same thing. You could do that, but there isn't any control of that that animation. It's basically the textures has that animation built in. But if you do want Lua commands to control that texture atlas animation stuff, then please send that in as feedback and then we'll help you out. So just scrolling through the chat, I think it's important that I answer these questions rather than go off on a tangent what I wanted to demonstrate, so everyone gets a little bit of what they want by attending the live session. How do you do comp a cat? That was from Blue Booger. How do you comb a cat? Comb a cat. How do you comb a cat? Very carefully. Yes, very carefully. In fact, Parrot might just say carefully as well. Yeah, okay. Scrolly. Let's see if there's any other great questions. Preferably not cat related. Again, yeah, use the control key if you want to sort of adjust the clipping range. Got another question from Vanna. How about a vertical line which has a control on it? Just drag it up and down. Yeah, just add that as feedback and we'll get round to it. Looks great, nice atmosphere. That's from VRG 2015. Thanks very much. Vanna, Lee, can that terrible scene be fixed? Absolutely. When you're designing your levels, you've got to look for situations like that, and that's about the craft of making sure that your end level looks really good. I deliberately put that scene in just to show you the things that you want to avoid when you're doing your own scene. So it was completely deliberate. An idea from VRG 2015, a colour picker to take the colour from the rocks and repaint the environment. Yeah, that would be a great idea. Basically like an RGB picker, so you can get the exact RGB colour and then use that rather than having to do all the different sliders to try and get it just right. I think that's an awesome idea. So someone has to remember that and then put it into a suitable format that they can go to one of our lists. So definitely email that in, because I will definitely remember it by the end of this broadcast. DirectX will be cool. It certainly will. That was from one of our chatters on the live broadcast. Just scrolling through. Blue Booger says, can this do over-the-shoulder camera? It certainly can. I can demonstrate that very quickly. We go to entities, characters, fantasy. The wizards are set up to be third-person characters. Just drop them onto your start marker, like so. And you notice it's just clicked onto there. That means it's a third-person game now. So now when you click test game, we've just got a third-person game instead of a first-person game. Normally, if you was programming, you'd have to sit down and then write an entire third-person control system, or dig around to try and find some modules that did it for you. With Game Guru, you literally add characters onto the start marker and you instantly get third-person character control. So there you've got over the shoulder, which is basically, you can actually see the front of him and the back of him and he looks side to side. But there's also another mode in third person which lets you do, actually that was another rock selection, so that's the one. And you can see we've got camera modes. There's a run mode here. If you set run mode to no, then it doesn't use the WASD movement. It uses the keys, but you'll see what I mean. It doesn't actually have the character face the camera. It's always facing sort of the action as you would in first person. So you see this time he's always facing into the game, and that's over the shoulder, and then mouse loop gives you your targeting. And now we've got a weapon, we've got magic, because the weapon is the wizard itself. Yes! You'll also notice that the fireball has its own lighting. So in addition to the four lights, the four dynamic lights, that is sort of that subtle orangey stuff there and the subtle orangey stuff there, you also have in addition the shader knows about a weapon light, which is what that uses. As you can see, it looks pretty cool. So moving back to the questions, as there are many, but we've got 5 minutes left in this broadcast, so I should be able to get through it if I talk faster, if that's even possible. I've had waypoints appearing at strange places when I hit create waypoint. Any ideas? Well, it can only create the waypoint wherever the centre of the terrain is. So if I click that, see it puts it over here, but if I create it there, it puts it a bit more towards the centre. If I click it there, it drops it down. So every time you click it, just look generally in the centre of wherever it is you are, and then you can actually grab it and move it to where you want, and it follows the terrain. You notice it's following the terrain wherever it is. So it's sometimes it can not be quite in the exact centre because of the way the terrain is all oriented, but just keep an eye out for it in the centre, and if you do find it, then you can move it to where you need it to be for your game. So hopefully that gives you a bit more insight. Got a question from, or a statement from A1Wanderer189. My GG crashes often using quite a few video hog programs. Yeah, that's actually built in. Yeah. The video memory flushes and Game Guru restarts the session so it can load all the video stuff back in, because these other programs, they wipe out the video memory. It's just the way DirectX 9 works, and like I said, DirectX 11, we're going to be aware of that, we're going to anticipate it and handle it a lot better, so you don't have to reload all the other things like sound and data that you've loaded into the heap as well. So I've got nearly to the end of the questions, which is good. I think we can squeeze it all in time. This is from Keith Cal. Is there any lighting effects, such as a flashing fluorescent light, included in the lower scripting for lights? You know what? There probably is, but I may have completely forgotten about it. Pirate Mark answers, I believe some did it in the script boards as light_flicker, not sure if it's stock. Synchromesh, flicking script available on store, but there's also a free one around on the script board. So you can definitely dig that out. I'm going to show you what we've got at the moment, because we may have something like that. Just going to zoom in a little bit and grab this light. Go to entities, lights. That's not it. That's one. No, wait, this one. Lock that. You can know when you've got the light because it's got that on. Yeah. So we're using light1.lua. So if we go back to the script bank, which is in files, and look for lights, we've got light1.lua, light switch, light zone. If we look at light zone, That's very good. That gives us the commands we may need. And I'm just going to do a really simple flicker in 3 minutes. Let's see if we can do it. We've got fog, you can control ambient, you can control surface, but that isn't controlling lights, is it? So we can ignore that. Light 1, that does absolutely nothing. It's just a default placeholder. This is an interesting one. Look, show light and hide light. That's all we need to be able to do our flicker thing. So I'm going to cheat. I'm going to copy it light switch into a new script. I'm going to call it light flicky, just in case there is already something called flicker. Remember to copy the file, go into it and change the names of these two functions. We don't need that global. We only want certain things, so we won't bother about distance. We want the hide light, we want the show light. We don't need anything else. Although I really like the idea actually now of this array which can be on and off. So I want to keep that. So if I go back and nick this, what I'm copying in now, it declares the array. It says I want to create an array, and you need to specify it outside of your function. So its default is on. So what we can do is really simple. If it says on, then we want to switch it off. Yeah? And when we switched it off, we say that it's off. And then, if it's obviously not on, it's going to be off, isn't it? So then it's the toggle activity of that. It's never a good idea to do programming when there is literally 1 minute to go. But what the hell? It's a laugh. So there's our new script. It defaults as on. When it's on, it hides it and it switches it off, else it switches it on and it switches that on, and the cycle repeats over and over and over. The light script is called light_flicky.lua. We go back to our game, we change the default one to this new one that we've just created called light flicky, apply changes, we run the game. Now it's going to flicker on and off very, very quickly, so you may not notice the effect. But you know, there's only one way to find out, isn't there? Let's to run it. So where would our light be? Well, it should be here, but as you can see, it's all very dark. So, in theory, that's how you actually make a light flicker. But there's probably something wrong with the logic here. But what I would probably do is do a random thing, so it chooses whether it's randomly on or off, and then I would put a delay in. So it basically has a couple of milliseconds before it changes the state of the light. And I think also there may be commands to change the colour of the light as well, which I think's in there too. So that's how you would play around with that. But like I said, not easy just to go onto the store or in the forums and grab the script that does that. So that's it. I think that is all the questions, and I'm glad that I got to the end. This has been Game Guru live broadcast on Twitch. I or someone else will be back next Wednesday at 4 PM. So thanks for your attention, and I shall cue the music and say goodbye.